All right, we're going to talk about decimals today. So decimals are like fractions, all right? They're less than a whole. And so they have a place value chart just like we do here. So we've learned about ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on. And when you have your decimal, you have place value to the right, and it's tenths. So notice how we have THS here, right? Tenths. That's the fraction, not tens, tenths. And we have hundredths. Okay, so those are the two place values we're going to talk about, tenths and hundredths. Okay, and so when I like to talk about decimals, I like to relate it to money. Okay, so your tenths are like your dimes. So 10 dimes make $1, and 100 pennies make $1. Okay, so we're going to think about it like that. So if you have the decimal and then 1 0, you have 1/10, right? And 0 hundredths. So if I were to put that in there and read this, right? 1/10, 0 hundredths. So it's like having 10 cents out of $1. So 1/10. Okay. Now if let's say I had 1 5. Okay. So I have 1/10, which is like a dime, and then 5 pennies, which is 5 cents, right? So this would be like 15 cents, and we would say 15 hundredths, because we're looking at what column we end in here, okay? If we had, let's say, a decimal that looked like this, okay? Showing us we have 0 tenths, and we have 6 hundredths, which would be like having 6 pennies out of a dime, right? Or 6 cents. So this chart becomes very valuable when we're thinking about what we're going to say. So let's look. I said that they're like fractions too, right? So if we look here, if we look at our picture, right, we have 10 slots and one's colored in. So this is 1/10. Or I can say 1/10 and 1/10 and 0 hundredths. So we could, it doesn't matter if we have zeros along the way, it's still 1/10. There's no number in here, right? We're just kind of holding place value. So 1/10. So this is 1/10, right? And as a decimal, it looks like this, okay? So let's look at the next one. So here we have 10 pieces, 2 are colored in, so 2/10 or 2/10. And if I do put the 0 here, I'm just holding place value. There's no value there, right? So it's still 2/10. We can also say 20. Let's look at that quick. We could also say, let's do a text box here. We could also say 20 hundredths, right? So we could say 2/10 or 20 hundredths. And if we did our rule, right, remember when we did our arrows, right? So can this 10 become a 100? Yes, it can, right? Say if I said that we're going to multiply by 10, right? 10 times 10 is 100. And then we have to do whatever we do to the top, we have to do the bottom. So 2 times 10 is 20. So these are equal, right? We could say it either way. We could say 2/10 or 20 hundredths. All right, so let's look at the next one. So again, we have a 10th picture. There's 10 spots, 3 are colored in, right? So we could say 3/10. See if I get my little arrow. 3/10 or if I have the 0 here, right? 30 hundredths, which is equivalent. All right, let's look here. Here, 7 out of 10 are colored in. Or, I should put them, so 7/10. We'll do it this way. Well, 7/10 or 70 hundredths. The zeros there, right? Those are equivalent. All right, now let's look at hundredths. So we look at a grid like this. We know that there's 10 across and 10 down. We don't want to take the whole time counting all of these squares. There's 10 by 10, right? So that's 100. There's 100 squares here. One of them are colored in, so it's 1 out of 100, 1/100th. Or there's 0/10 and there's 1/100th, okay? All right, we're going to look at this one. Here again, 10 by 10, it's 100. Let's count our spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 out of 100, or 5/100ths. And then as a decimal, 0.05. All right, let's look at this one. Here again, it's 100th squares, so there's 9 out of 100, because if each row is 10, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So I know that this is almost filled up, so it's 9 out of 100, or 9/100ths, or 0.09. Okay. The next one, again, what's out of 100? So here's my 10, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 17 out of 100, or 17/100ths, and this is what it looks like as a decimal, right? There's 1/10, there it is, there's your tenths, right? And 7/100ths, okay? Or 17/100ths. Same thing here. So 10, 20, 30, 2. 32 out of 100, which is 32/100ths, and 0.32, right? 32/100ths. Right, let's look at the next one. 100, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 78 of 100, which as a fraction is 78/100ths, and it looks like this, okay? 78/100ths, okay? All right, so let's go down, and we want to know what decimal is illustrated here, right? So if we look at these, we know that they're all hundredths, right? So here's my 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 15 hundredths, right? So I would say point, and there's 2 spots for hundredths, right? Here's my tenths, here's my hundredths. So that's what that looks like as a decimal. Or I could even say equals 15 over 100, right? Those two are the same. Okay, let's look at this one. All right, what would this be as a decimal? Okay, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's 50. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 57, right? So 0.57. It looks like as a decimal. This is what it looks like as a fraction. All right, let's look at this one right here. So 10, 20, 30, 40. There's 100 squares, right? So there you go. Or 40 over 100. Okay, this one, 100 squares. So I see that there's 10 filled up and one more. So what do you think the decimal looks like? 0.11, right? 11 hundredths. 2 spaces for hundredths, or 11 out of 100. Okay? And let's just look at these last two, right? These are tenths. So I see that there's 4 tenths. And if we go back here and we think about where the tenths are, right? It's the first spot after the decimal. So if we're going to go back here, right? We know that, okay, these are tenths. And tenths come the first spot after the decimal. So there's 4 tenths, right? Or we could write it as a fraction, 4 tenths. Right here, these are again tenths. So I know that the first spot after the decimal is the tenths spot. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 tenths. Okay? And as a fraction, it would be 6 tenths. Okay? All right, so we're going to try some on our own now. All right.